for those who may not have been with us last time, I'm going to be really, really quick. You get a quick preview, as I just tagged today's lesson number 13 on to 12. So if you have 12 stuffed away in your Bible somewhere, we're going to just zip really fast through it, because 13 is what the materials I'm using as kind of a guidebook for this study would call the theological impacts of creation viewpoint. And I'm going to call it "So What?" So it makes more sense to me. Anyway, so we started out with who is man, and we looked at the idea of origins of man and kind of the two main theories out there being either creationism, where we call fiat creationism. It does not mean fiat automobiles. And fiat has a bad taste in my mouth right now because my tractor engine that's in part was made by the Fiat company, and I'm not really impressed with it at the moment. But fiat meaning that God by command said, "Let there be," and it was done. So it was his fiat, or his word, that said that. And then the other one being naturalistic. Whoop, I didn't fix that one. It should be evolutionary development, or the naturalistic creationism, which is a combination of both. I knew there was a slide that was wrong, and I went looking for it, and I looked right over it again. But evolution on the one hand, creation on the other, kind of the two major ones, or some mixture of both. And does it matter? And we looked at the inerrancy issue of God's Word, that this is going to be our guide. So we might look at lots of outside evidences or things like that just to support it, but if we believe that the Word's inerrant, then the tool that we have to determine why we're here is going to be driven by the Word, and we're going to have to wrestle with that. We talked about the idea of the science of evolution and what a theory was versus a model. That evolution is not a theory that you can put in a test tube and test and prove that it's true. You have to have a model, an idea of how you think things work that explains where we are today, and then you look at all the evidence out there and say, does it fit the model, or does it raise questions that your model can't explain? An example would be evolutionary model says that there's lots of gradual change through time. One of the difficulties that they need to explain, but usually avoid, is the idea that when you find the carcasses of things out there from way, way back that are fossilized, do you see layers of basic ones and then more advanced and more advanced and more advanced? Or what do you see out there? And if they're honest with you, what you will find is that they see everything's upside down and backwards and all stirred together, and you see definite forms of very, very few. You have to tweak and work hard to find ones that you can call the transitionary. There should be lots of transitionary fossils out there. There are virtually none. So that's something they have to explain. Their model says there should be lots. Creation says you would find just exactly what we see is everything as a definite species with definite characteristics. So that fits our model, if you will. So that was that really quick. We went back to the beginnings of this evolutionary idea, came out of Charles Darwin, of course, and the background of the Industrial Revolution. During that period of time, it became very, very appealing to then see all the greatness of man, the technological leaps we were able to make, and the development of economics and society in a lot of ways. Lots of stuff happened. Fascinating study, if you like history, to go and get away from the memorize this date that this happened and look at how and what was happening in the world of agriculture, of industry, of banking, all those things that happened at once during that time period in the early 1800s to mid to late 1800s, and find that a non-religious answer to why we were here became very popular. It gave us a reason to say, we don't have to go to church and listen to that. And it gives you a non-religious answer to what is moral, what is right, what is wrong. And when you're an industrialist who likes to elbow all the other industrialists aside and be the biggest railroad man by hook or by crook, it's nice to have survival of the fittest to explain why you should succeed and your opponent should go down in flames because he irritated. So That's a whole other historical thing.
Boy, it sounds like today.
Yeah, yeah. And it gives you a chance to decide what's right without having the Bible get in the way. So then you have to ask the question then you got to look at your models and decide, is your model driven by science and the evidence that's out there? Or is your model driven by what you want to be? And so if you come up with the idea first, and then you can try to shoehorn your things into it. So then we looked at the beginnings of the creation model, which is basically Genesis. God says, let us make man in our image, and he created mankind then in his image, in the image of God. He created them male and female. He created them, and he formed man out of the dust of the earth. And it's most interesting if you go to your science book and look at what man is made out of. And it indeed is the elements that you find in the earth, if you will, and that's where we end up going back to. Okay, I said it works in the church. You got all this, what about science? If you're interested in the science viewpoint in creationism, here's the place you can go, and it's on that handout from last time. And they've got lots of resources from scientists that are Christians that look at the model of creationism and look at the science out there and say, does it fit? And they have some very interesting research. And I think we ended up here in Psalms where it said how we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that God had his eyes on us, that even before he was born, all the details of the psalmist were written down. We believe in creation, so what? What difference does it make? Are we now just in a position where we can go out and rub our belief in creation in somebody's nose, or say, well, I'm not, is it just something that we can say we know, or does it make a difference to us in who we are and what we do? Well, it does make a difference in how you think, I hope. And here are some of the things I want you to think about. Because we believe in creation, then what do we know about us? One is humans are created and they have no independent existence. Okay, you are not independent. God willed then that man should exist, and he willed, if you will, that each one of us individually should exist. If that is true, you got to remember, we'll go back to our study about God, and it says he's sovereign, he's been there forever, he's eternal, and all this sort of thing. Did he need us? And when you take that fact that God is sovereign and independent and he doesn't need anyone or anything, and you combine that with the fact that man is created by God, and the answer is he did not need to create man. He chose to do so, and he did it, but he didn't need to. And so then the question is, why would he do that? And we need to discover God's purpose in placing each of us here. And my little hint there, it's not about us. Yes, he did it, but it's about him. He chose to do it, and he has a reason. That's our part of our goal in life, and in study of the Word and all, is to find that out. So, and you go, so let's go there. Well, not quite yet, but we'll get through all. That's kind of the bigger study that we're in. So, the next thing that's there is part of, if we're part of creation, is that we are part of the larger creation. In other words, we're one component, and we're a special component, as we'll see. But there's a whole lot of creation out there that we share a lot of commonality with. We all have to have the earth to survive. We need water, we need food, we need air to breathe, we need all those things. And the fact that we have that commonality should have an impact on how we live in this world. There are those who take the thing of creation, and in particular the one, as we get down to the next question, is, let's roll on down there. So just get an idea that we are part of a larger creation, a special part, that a part nonetheless of the rest of it, and how we relate to it matters. While we share commonality with the rest of creation, there's an element that makes man unique. One is the identity that man has, and there's a whole other study we may be wrestling with right now called the image of God, and what does that mean? We know it means something important because he started right out, and he said it twice in Genesis, that in the image of God you were created. And what does that mean? It doesn't say that about any of the other of creation. He created all the animals, they're all in their kind and like their kinds and things like that. But it doesn't say anything about the image of God in anything except man's creation. So we have a special identity that we need to think about. And then we are given a responsibility. It says, let's make man, and we are going to have him have, and the word there in our translation is dominion over the rest of creation. What does that mean? Some people have taken that word and said, oh, that means pillage and rape and burn all the rest of the world. In other words, you can turn it all upside down and it doesn't matter because you're supposed to have dominion. And the argument is that, well, God's going to burn it all up someday anyway, so if we trash it by the end of the time, that's fine. Well, the word dominion doesn't mean that. It means you have the caretaker's responsibility and you owe yourself to the landlord. So it's kind of like me renting from my landlord and their farm up there. It is not my place to go and suck everything out of that land for as long as I want and then turn it back to them with ditches in it and rocks and weeds and trash it. It is my responsibility as the tenant to return that land to them at the end of the lease in as good or better condition than I got it. So while we're not told we have to keep this pristine world out there, there's a responsibility that we have in the time that we're here to care for God's creation that we're part of in such a way that it gets passed on to those. At the end, we take care of it. We are responsible to our Creator for what we do with what He's given us. And we're there. It's there for our use. It's there for us to live and to supply ourselves. It's not there for us to just take what we want for us. And if you look at some of the history of mankind, and you look at the Industrial Revolution in particular, the idea was survival of the fittest. I'm more fit. I can go and get what I want. And if I cut all the timber down west of the Mississippi and make a fortune for me, that's okay. It did not come out of a Christian worldview that says we have a responsibility to Creator. It came out of the idea that survival of me, the fittest. You may not agree to that totally, but if you look at what they did and the way they thought, what they wrote and said, that's what you hear. And the last one, life consists of more than just meeting physical needs. In spite of what the world tells you, because what's all the advertising tell you? Everything you hear on TV, on radio, on the signs along the road, everything else is you need stuff. If you want to be happy, get stuff. That's the answer to happiness. Be somebody, get stuff. Well, physical needs are not the end all. Physical needs are part, it's understandable. We're created physical beings, there are needs that we have. But life is more than that. And our need is to discover what that is. This one is close to home with our announcement this morning, or our prayer concerns this morning. There is a brotherhood among humans. Because we all go back to a common ancestry in Adam and Eve, whatever you want to argue about them to be. Whether they are actual physical two individuals or it's some kind of a picture of the beginnings of some two individuals that Adam and Eve represent, which is an interesting exercise for me to wrestle with. But either way, whatever sin and rebellion has done to separate us from one another, we still all go back to the same origin. Doesn't matter what part of the planet we live on. Have you noticed, this should produce empathy and concern for others. And I hope all of you, when you heard of the shooting, or when you hear of this bombing in this place, and it's getting tough because you hear so much about them that you start to get a little callous. but something inside you just goes, for those folks over there. What gets me is listening to the news, my next point here. It's not just close family. You hear about an accident on the road and you know you had a family member driving on a piece of highway. Your first concern is always going to be, oh my goodness, I hope it's not my husband, my wife, my child, my parents, somebody I know close by. And then it gets, well, somebody I have no idea, so it doesn't matter. And that's just, we can only have the capability to be deeply concerned about a certain number of people. That's just one of the limitations we have. And yet we almost get this, it's not close to me, it doesn't matter. Have you caught the news media? A plane went down somewhere over Malaysia, but there were no Americans on board, so it's not important. Have you noticed those kind of comments? It went down here, this plane went down, this ship sank, and on board were 2 Americans. Why is it important that there were 2 Americans on? Is it more important that there were 2 Americans on board, or is it more important that there were 150 people that died and lost their lives there? I mean, how do we look at these events, and what happens in our brain when we hear these things about this?
It's always interesting because they always call them souls.
Souls.
For airplanes, so many souls.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the official way to report it too. Yeah, so many souls on board. Interesting. That way you can be, you don't have to say men, women, children.
It also gives it, they're thinking of a higher authority right there. They didn't say soul.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that,
so.
Yeah, the way they use that word, and why do they use that word, that's interesting. That's another part of our discussion of humanity. If we go there, we're trying to figure out how to sort this out, not bore you to death, but how many pieces is man made out of? And just what is he? Is it just a physical body and that's it? Anyway, so there's a connection among us that ought to make a difference in the way we look at other people and other places and other things. Not that we can have the same level of loss from someone we don't know in Central Africa that's killed in bombing as someone in our immediate family that dies. I mean, just because the relationship isn't there. But yet, there still ought to be concern about that. And not just because it's somebody from our country or whatever. This one, number 5 there, humanity, believe it or not, is not the highest objective, the highest object in the universe. You would think in this world we live in, of course, that the most important thing that ever happens anywhere is some amazing thing that man is able to do. And the whole of, we're looking for life on some other planet. I'm almost suspicious that the reason we're looking for life on another planet, because we could say, we're better than they are. We're more advanced than they are, or we're somehow higher and more important than they are. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I just get the sense that our world today would do that. We can have a lot of respect for man and his accomplishments, and there's a good reason to do that, but only God is to be worshipped. And correct my Matthew reference, the right chapter, wrong verses. That should be 37 through 40, so if you got a pencil, just scratch that out, or when you're looking at that, move up. Verse 37 says, I'll back up a little bit. I'll read the whole passage from verse 34. But when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered themselves together. One of them, a lawyer, of course, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he says to him, and you all know the answer to this one, right? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. So number 1, the greatest commandment is that. The second command is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments depend the whole law and the prophets. We tend to get the cart before the horse on that one as a people. We tend to think that the highest thing is people and their accomplishments. And it's important to love your neighbors yourself. But notice it follows to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. To reverse those. To put the love of family or the love of someone or a human being, to put that person above your worship of God is idolatry. And it's sin. It's hard to remember that sometimes. And it gets down to the nitty-gritty when it's time, when you're dealing with family issues and things like that, and being it's Father's Day and all. Hey dads, it's really easy to just make excuses and say, well, it's my family first. I got to spend time. I've been away working all week long, and it's important to be with my family on Sunday, so we're going to stay home and have a barbecue today because we need the family time. Or Wednesday night, I can't go to prayer meeting because I have to be with my family tonight. Guys, it's really easy to say that. But what your family needs, as well as time with you, is a man that says, the highest, most important command is you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to demonstrate that in your life before your children. And not place your kids and yourself above God. There are definite limitations on man. And you go, well, yeah, but think about it. People ever met anybody that thought man was so smart that he knew everything? Well, humans are able to understand and know a lot of things. It is amazing with our technology, the things that man has been able to figure out, and we receive benefit from that. It's wonderful. The medical stuff, the computer, the stuff you can do with a phone is out of this world, and I think we've probably only scratched the surface of what these brilliant people are going to make possible. It's amazing. Yeah, it can be bad, but it's got amazing potential. However, they are not infinite and they cannot know everything. Human beings just cannot. They are not God. Humans are subject to being wrong. Oh, no, surely not. Not me. So a sense of humility in our judgment is necessary. That is a tough one. That is really tough, because when we are thoroughly convinced of something we think we know, and we think we're right about something, it is really easy to forget that our viewpoint can be really messed with.
I think humans are able to leap tall buildings now.
You think they are?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw something like that on TV.
I'll bet it's on the internet somewhere, probably a video.
Okay,
Humans will never be able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. No. I'm sure that's coming. No. I mean, there's some physical things. I mean, gosh, you look at these athletes these days and what they can do. It's amazing. We were just looking at the kids in Bickleton, little Peter Bickleton up there, and they got a young man there that shows him standing in front of a high jump bar that he jumps. And he's the guy, he's not much taller than I am, just a little wiry guy. And my gosh, that thing's clear up here, over his head. But he still hasn't beat our school, and the state B record is held by my neighbor, but he's about tall and all legs. So he slowed down a little bit over the years. But anyway, it's just incredible what physical advances through training and all that stuff they can do. But they're not going to be able to leap tall buildings. I'm sorry. You're not going to fly without something else. Sorry to dash your hopes, but... And finally, and last of all, humans, like all of life, are subject to death. Hebrews 9:27 says it is appointed to man once to die. It's part of being human, is that there's a beginning and there's an end. And it's just the way it is. We may fight it for all we're worth. God may even expect us to cling to life, and that should be the normal way of us to desire to hang on and to use what God's given us for the fullest last moment that we have. But it's part of that. And even there's some argument about, well, when Adam was first created, he wasn't going to die. He would live forever. But there within him was the potential for death to enter. And unfortunately, through the fall, it did. However, limitations are not inherently bad. So this is where we get on the other side of the road. The first road is we can do everything, we can't do anything wrong, we're all perfect in our viewpoint. And the ditch on the other side of the road is somehow limitations are all bad. Limitations can be good. God pronounced His creation with the limitations that He put on us, and He said it is very good in Genesis. So if you look up Genesis 1:34, He looked at His creation, He says, that is good. It is our improper responses to those limitations that either constitute or result in sin. When we look at them in the wrong way, we either deny their existence and want to proclaim ourselves to be all wise, or we see them as more of a problem than they really are. That's where the problem lies. So, which rolls us into number 8 there, as we come down to the end here. Acceptance of our finiteness and our limitations is necessary for correct adjustment of our lives to God's plan. We need to understand what it is we can do and what it is we can't do, and be able to honestly deal with that. The basic problem showed up in the garden, and I stuck it in there for you, Genesis 3:4-6. The serpent came down to him and whispered in Eve's ear and said, that is really good looking fruit. And by the way, not only is it good looking, if you eat it, what will it do for you? You will be like God. If you go over into, it's Ezekiel. Yeah, it's Ezekiel. I should look that one up. Where there's the 5 I wills of this one called Lucifer, son of the morning. One of Lucifer's things was, I will be like the Most High. I will exalt myself above God. And you go, we all know we're not God. We could do that. Have you ever had something happen in your life that was not what you wanted, not what you hoped for, not what you would have settled for if you had a choice in the matter? It happened, and you said, what did I do to deserve this? I can testify to having found myself there. When you do that, what have you just done? God, what you made happen in my life is wrong, and I'm deciding better than you that you should not have done that. You know, at the moment, that's not what pops in your head. God, you did it all wrong. You should have listened to me. But that's what we're saying. That is that little bit of, I want to be like God. In this instance, for now, I want to take God and say, no, don't do it that way. Do it my way. And that temptation is powerful, and that's where we have not accepted our finiteness and the fact that God has done this. The catastrophe in Jemima, as awful as it is, look at Lamentations, our study we went through, and God says, this horrendous thing that happened to Jerusalem, that's thousands of people that died, the ones that starved, all of that, He says, I am doing this, and I'm doing it for a reason. It's awful. I've turned this guy loose on you. But there is purpose behind it. You may not understand it, but it's there. We need to be willing to let God be God. When we can't explain it, when we don't understand it, when it's out of our control, we need to understand that God is God and He's in charge and we are not. And not attempt to pass judgment on His deeds. In other words, Lord, I want it this way. I don't deserve this. I didn't deserve to be stupid and mash my fingers in a trailer hitch. You should have miraculously stopped me from doing that. But He had my education in mind more than my comfort. So I put up that little inconvenience, and we'll get to be reminded for a long, long time of that point. We don't have infinite knowledge that's required to understand and make judgment on all those things. Only God has that. Yeah, go ahead.
But don't we make choices?
Oh, sure, we make choices, yeah.
So couldn't they?
We still, and we've given this huge amount of latitude to make choices and to choose what we want and what we'd like to do. And He's given us these great abilities to exploit and use and enjoy. But when things are out of our control happen, we have to realize that God's sometimes doing things we don't understand.
But still, would that be my choice? Even if I've done it? If I got my hand in the hitch,
I made a,
that was my choice.
that was my choice to put my hand in there and be foolish.
Yeah, and so how can you?
And now I'm looking at it and going, yeah, you're right, that was foolish, Lord. And also what I've learned is an amazing appreciation for people who have real handicaps. I have an amazing appreciation for people who have no sense of feeling. It's incredible. I probably need to sit down and say, this one piddly little accident, what have I learned? And I so much appreciate the doctor's ability to do stuff, people's ability to adjust and adapt to things that are handicapping that I would just think is impossible. You know, like that young man that lost his arm to the shark attack thing. What a great attitude he seems to have. I can either live my life or lay here and feel sorry for myself, and I'm going to live. You know, and so they adjust to this. These guys come back from battle with limbs gone and traumatic brain injuries, and somehow they're amazing people. They deserve our appreciation and not our worship, but our respect and everything from those kind of things. And some of them made choices that got them into issues, and some of them just things happen. Linda, you
Sometimes when bad things happen, we blame God for the bad things, but he would have helped you maybe if you thought to ask Him before you did whatever.
yeah, if we take a little guidance ahead of time, why
You
don't
might
we
want to
do
look
that?
out for that hand,
Yeah.
because this thing's going to snap shut.
Well, I think I made the illustration of when your child is out doing something. How many times do you say, there's a calculation there, it says, how harmful is this to them? For example, touching a hot stove. You've told them and told them and told them, do not touch that wood stove, it's going to be hot. And you see that little hand starting to go over there and you go, is this the lesson? Is this the teachable moment? You know, and then, wow, okay, that's what I'm talking about. You know, reinforced. So I think sometimes God uses those things to teach us other things we need to know, to listen, to respect. So anyway, that's a long conversation, but He can do that. We don't always need to be right. Only God needs to be right. Only God always is right. And so it's okay to not be right. That's really hard in our culture to understand because our culture says you need to be right all the time. And if not, you at least need to pretend to be that way. And we don't need to do that. And we don't need to fear failure. This is big for young people especially. Sometimes young folks are afraid to try stuff or somehow feel like everything they do has to be perfect and you should never fail and you should never have a disappointment or anything like that. If you haven't risked anything, if you haven't taken the chance of failure, maybe if you haven't actually even failed, I'm not sure you've lived. That God is the only one that will never fail. And sometimes we'll make choices and think that's where God's taken us, and it'll be wrong. It'll steer us around some other direction. But at least we're going in a direction, we've made a choice, and we're using what God has provided for us to make those choices. Hopefully they're wise. We do need a proper humility that understands our God-given limitations as well as abilities. That is so refreshing to be around people that have that. I've been around some really, really intelligent people that are so sharp at what they do, and you would not know all the degrees and stuff they have behind them because they are just real people, and they will tell you what they know. They will share their wisdom with you, but it's not in your face, I'm so important. I enjoyed one little story I read we're getting really close here, but It so perfectly illustrates. It was a young man that had come in, he'd been through school, and he was applying for a teaching job at a seminary. And man, in his resume and his letter and everything, he could do everything so wonderfully for a guy that never taught before. He had this thing, and the guys were reviewing it. And he said, the one professor or the administrator there asked the other guy, says, what do you think about this guy? What are we going to do with this application? And the other guy kind of scratched his head and he said, well, he says, you know, I really don't think we have a position lofty enough for this guy to take. He said, there have not been any additions to the Trinity for thousands of years. You know, and unfortunately, some of us find ourselves in a position where we get the idea that we have to convince everybody of our perfection, where no one will like us or no one will hire us or anything like that. Sometimes a really good dose of humility that just comes through is, here's what I'm able to do and here's some things I don't know. There's nothing more powerful in an interview when somebody's asked you a question and you honestly say, you know, I don't know, but I think this is what I would do to find out and to deal with it. And then the employer goes, oh, someone who's teachable is important. Humanity is nonetheless something wonderful. We are amazing, fearfully and wonderfully made. We're not just a product of blind chance of something that just happened by accident because a couple of things flashed together in a puddle somewhere. We are a carefully designed product of God. Individually and as a whole, mankind is incredible. Human greatness and achievement placed in the proper context of the one who made them possible can even more glorify the God who in infinite wisdom created me. Your accomplishments, the things that you're able to do with your God-given abilities and talents and brain and all that sort of thing, directed in a way that He wills, shines a light on Him. And you can point to Him and say, praise God, He gave me the opportunity to do this. And we've seen that with people. I don't know if you've seen that with some political figures, with some movie stars and some other people that have made a big splash in the world, and they can say, you know what, God gave me these abilities and I am blessed to be able to do what I love doing. And wow, that's refreshing. It is, and it shines a light right on Him. I like Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness, our calling. Come into His presence with singing. We'll get to do that pretty soon. Know that the Lord, He is God. Now, think about that one. The Lord, He is God. It is He who made us, and we are His. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture. Therefore, enter His gates with thanksgiving and His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him and bless His name. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and His faithfulness to all generations. Let's go. Father, we thank You that You are God, that You have made us, that we are Your special creation. Your eye is upon us. You say that You have numbered even the hairs on our head, that You are closely watching over our lives, and that You have given us the amazing talents and abilities, the intelligence, and all that we have, the physical attributes of strength, all these things that we are and that we have are provided by You. Father, help us to understand how we fit into Your plan for creation, to be able to give You praise for these natural things that You have blessed us with, but to understand what our limitations are, and to allow You to be God, to work in the areas that we have no control or no understanding, and to trust You because we have a relationship with You that You have created us to have, that You have designed us with that unique thing, however we understand it, that says we are created in Your image, that apparently gives us, unlike any of the other creation, an opportunity to walk in the garden as Adam and Eve had done with You. not only in a future, in the streets of gold, as we call them, and are described to us in a future time, but that you have made it possible through the death of your Son, through his sacrifice on the cross, and our faith in that redeeming sacrifice, we can walk with you in this life today, that we can know that we are living a life that's glorifying to you and will be greatly satisfying and fulfilling to us. Thank you, Father, for that opportunity, for the chance to go through these things today. Pray that it would make a real difference in our daily lives, in what we do and what we say and how we point others to the Savior. For